Hello, you have joined the Script Mistress for scene 31, interview with April's winner, Ben Wagle. I hope I said that right, Ben. I'm your host, Amber Bosworth, and I'm so excited to bring you this episode. I think I had so much fun speaking with Ben, and I decided to take a little bit of a break from the Archetype series again, just to give you this interview. I think it's amazing. I think one of the best things about running the Ink to Screen challenge is getting to give out money to a writer who won the challenge and then get to sit down and pick their brain and learn all the amazing ways that they do their process and their writing process. So Ben was one of over 35 writers tasked with writing a new script based on an image prompt. Now, I found a great image showing a large wave swelling with a sunset kind of in its center. Well, a sunset or sunrise, depending on how you would look at it. Ben wrote the title, A Nonsense Day at the Beach. And the logline is a writer finds that life comes to you in waves and learns how to roll with the tides. This was such a great interview. I had so much fun. I think in light of the writer's strike, it was just such a great way to really kind of express, the challenges that writers go through and what we do and how we process things and how we view the world. I thought it was such a great interview, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. On this computer. All right, so here we are. We are with Ben, who won the April challenge. How are you doing, Ben?
Great. Happy to be here. Really excited. The challenge is really fun. Thanks for setting it all up.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you pronounce your last name? I just want to make sure I say it.
Wagle, Wagle, Wagle. Yeah, it's
Wagle.
Indian
Okay,
last
see.
name.
So when I do my intro, because I'll do it later, do that
Yeah.
right. Logline. Very good. All right. So tell us a little bit about the script. What's the name? And if you don't remember the logline, I do have it.
Yeah. So the script's name, it's called A Nonsense Day at the Beach, which was a line I took out of the script that felt fitting for the title. Um, and the log line, I think you can read it off. I don't have it pulled up right. Actually, I do. I do have it pulled up. The log line is a writer finds that life comes at you in waves and learns how to roll with the tides, which I took off of the image, the inspiration image you gave us.
Yes, very good. And I thought because you guys submitted before the writer's strike, I just thought it had such a nice punctuation on what all the writers are going through right now, how we find inspiration in that. So it just had a little bit of extra oomph to it, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So what else kind of inspired this besides the prompt? What kind of or what part of it really brought it out?
Yeah, so we had 5 days for this challenge, and I'd done 5-page screenplay challenges before that you have 2 or 3 days. So this was a little more time to think, which is nice. And for the first couple days, it was more back of mind trying to ideas would come in, and then I would throw that out if that's not interesting or it doesn't really fit with the prompt. Was very interesting in that it purely is just like a wave out in the ocean. But luckily I live in Santa Monica. So on the Saturday before this was the deadline for the competition, we had nice weather. So we actually went to the beach, and it was sitting at the beach, not really watching the waves, but just watching people walk back and forth, that I thought that the prompt sets up this story that could easily be at a beach. I imagine most stories were set at a beach in some form. Of just what are the kinds of people you could see on a beach, who are the kinds of people you would interact with or see. There's people playing games, there's people who are selling food. I just thought that world would be really interesting to write in, and then you could get a little weirder with it, of kind of quirky characters that could show up on a beach that ended up with this story.
Yes, no, I love that. And it was so in the 5 pages, being able to encapsulate how we as writers get our inspiration and how just watching around and
Right.
sometimes the most mundane things can be inspirational. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that really came from being Saturday and me still not having an idea. I was like, well, what if I just write about a person who doesn't have an idea, and that's the point of the story? And
Mhm.
it came together nicely enough.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah.
And so describe your screenwriting journey. When did you start becoming or writing screenplays, or your writing journey altogether?
Sure. So I think everyone has at points in their life ideas where they're talking with friends and they're like, "Oh, this would be a great show or this would be a movie."
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where when I was in college around 2012, 2013, that we had an idea for a show and we outlined all the different episodes you could have and then didn't do anything as almost everyone does. And then in 2017, I had constantly, so for 5 years, just been thinking about this other ideas, but this one just felt right. And I had ideas for dialogue and scenes and jokes, and there were jokes that I wanted to put in there. And I just went into a Google Doc. So no
Mm-hmm.
formatting, no tool. So it was like some stuff is centered, some stuff isn't centered. I kind of made it up and wrote it's supposed to be 23 pages from everything I read. So I wrote an exactly 23-page long screenplay that had, I think, maybe 10 scenes in it. The scenes were really long. And I thought, that's weird. So I went and read screenplays and watched episodes of TV,
Mm-hmm.
Parks and Rec, and other kind of sitcom comedy shows, and realized they have a lot of scenes. There's a lot of cutting between things. It's
Mm-hmm.
much faster and quicker. So I rewrote, revised that, shared it with some friends who thought it was funny, and from there just kind of kept reading more, writing more, got an actual screenwriting software so that it would make everything easier. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
just been really learning, reading, writing constantly since then.
Very nice. Yes. I think my first one was on a Word document because mine was
Yeah.
back in 2002. Yes. So yes, we all started there and like, oh, is this the way? But yeah, the software definitely makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, much easier.
Yeah. So what were there any kind of books that you went to or anything like that? What was like something that really helped you out as you were beginning or as you were revising that script?
I read some of the standard stuff that you hear about. I think no one can start writing and not hear about Save the Cat as, oh, you should read
Mm-hmm.
this book. So I read that to get an idea of structure, and that goes to pages. I didn't really follow the this should happen by this page and this should happen
Mm-hmm.
by that page, but it gave me an
Yeah.
idea that that's even something you could think about. It's not just funny characters and events that happen and jokes, but that there should be this structure, which I got from watching enough movies and things. You understand how scenes can kind of play off each other and work together to drive a storyline.
Mm-hmm.
But really thinking about that through that book, I read. My grandma had an original version of Sid Field's screenplay book, so I read
Oh,
that
wow.
too, which was very old, and some of it made sense still, some of it didn't. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that I would read about online too. There were blogs that I would read about that said, learning everything that it came from is the most useful way to then like break the rules once you know the rules.
Yes.
And then I started taking actual writing classes with groups. There's a Corey Mandel screenwriting class that
Yeah.
I joined, and that's all virtual now. But that was really good to actually get feedback from,
Yeah.
instructors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those classes definitely help that way where you like look at my stuff, tell me where I'm going wrong. But
Exactly.
but yeah, and I think it's so great like when you think, your grandma's book you said, right? Your grandma's?
Yeah.
Yeah, so seeing it all the way back then, there are certain themes that are always the same. And I like what you said,
Hmm.
like you still need to know the rules before you can break them. Like
Yeah.
learn them and get really good at them first and then learn ways to deviate from them because I think that makes it just doesn't make you seem like an ass.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it really seems like you know what you're talking about and you come at it at a different way, I think. Respecting those, I think, is so important. So what
Hmm.
is a good like screenwriting mindset or technique that you get into when you write? Is there something that you do that kind of helps your process?
Interesting. So it's changed, especially because the class I took was very much on figuring out your process. And
Mm.
the process it taught is very logical. It's like making lists, list
Mm.
all possible ideas for everything. Don't think about the quality of the ideas, list
Hmm.
everything that could happen. So if you're writing a story at a beach, list all the things that could happen at a beach and come
Yeah.
up with 300 or 400 things. Then go through it and pick the stuff that would be the most useful in the kind of story you want to write.
Hmm.
That's a very organized, logical way to go about it. When I first started writing, it was like ruminate and stew on an idea and walk around with it in my head. And then it would get to these like pressure points where eventually it couldn't stay in your head anymore and you have to
Yeah.
write. And I would just write sitting on my couch. I didn't have a desk. It would be like my laptop in my lap and just it wasn't a goal of page count or anything. It was get out all of the things that were in my head of what character said, what the room looked like, and that would naturally flow into scenes that come before it or things that would be needed to make that line of dialogue make sense,
Yeah.
like the joke actually makes sense. So it was a mix of the more intuitive, natural flowing, which is how I liked to get it. It's more enjoyable that way in my mind to just kind of have the creativity flow out and hope that it
Mm-hmm.
keeps coming. But now, after trying a bunch of different ways, I'm a mix of that logical list way, and then for the most recent version of a pilot I wrote, I did full note cards, like all of the note cards for it, just to
Mm-hmm.
try that out. I really liked that, and that you could update the note card, move it to like the done pile when you were done. That's pretty
Yeah.
nice, and it doesn't inhibit the creative flow of it. It just lets you know
Mm-hmm.
where you're going. So I like that mix of
Mm-hmm.
having a roadmap and then putting the stuff in more creatively as I go through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love note cards for me. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
having them up, and because doing a sitcom too, you can kind of move things around a little bit just depending on
Yeah.
where you are in the story. So that really helps. And it's always nice when you're done and you put it down. It's like you feel like you've moved
Right.
forward, like your story is. So that's yeah, absolutely. So how about when you read another writer's script? What impresses you, or what do you like find that maybe is not so great in like beginning scripts or
Interesting. So yeah, I always try to read more as much stuff as I can, especially there's groups, Discord channels and things where you
Mhm.
can read other writers like me who are, learning and growing and
Yes.
getting to the point of, being better. Everyone is always
Mhm.
trying to get better, right?
Yep.
I find that the concepts I usually like and I get excited about, interesting ideas. People come up with such weird ideas, even ones that aren't things that I would write, like period piece. There was like
Mhm.
period piece stuff, pirates, and
Mhm.
you know, full on like rom com romance things or horror. A lot
Mhm.
of people have horror scripts they write that I wouldn't necessarily write that myself, but the ideas can be cool and exciting, and the way that they writers can naturally make the worlds feel real with like the characters and even how a character is named and things characters do. That always I find really exciting. And that my favorite part of even nonsense stories, I haven't come up with a word for it yet, but I love franchises. I don't even care if they're good. I just like this idea that you've created such a vast world and like just keep dumping ideas
Mhm.
into that world, even if it's terrible. I've watched all of the Saw movies, all of the Purge movies, all of any kind of movie that like how do you make 7 or 8 of these stories in this world? It's a real thing. Just like
Mhm.
everyone's favorite, fantasy books. Those are also great of just expanding upon a thing. So seeing people build a world and being able to kind of be in this thing that another person created, that's always really exciting. And then
Mhm.
in terms of I don't know if we call it
Yeah.
frustrations or things like that. There's always weird uh dialogue things or maybe it's like not the writer's voice but tone of way that they word a description or something where it could sound cool but it could feel forced, and you could tell these are things that the writer really wanted to put in rather than needed to be in the
Mhm.
script. That's where if I get that feeling, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that's the feeling you want to avoid of like, oh, you really wanted the character to say this, or you wanted
Mhm.
this thing to happen. Even just watching produced material, sometimes you watch a show and you're like, oh, they just wanted that character to come back, or they just wanted them to
Yeah.
all end up at this house, but it didn't make sense how any of them got there. That's a thing
Mhm.
that I come very much from. I work in software engineering, so like logical flow is probably the
Yeah.
hardest thing I have to fight against. But if I watch a show and I don't see that it made sense how something happened, that's the thing that I think I'm more picky on than usual.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I think I anybody who reads my feedback I'll be like, this didn't really make sense. Like
Mhm.
and I understand a short script, but it's still everything has to make sense. And
Right.
I do point that out. I'm the same way. I'm like that. It doesn't feel like the character would say that. It just seems like he wanted a happy ending, but it doesn't
Mhm.
feel like the character would have actually said that. So I like that you make it more of a visceral feeling. That's right. Like
Yeah.
as a writer, if there's something you feel like, oh, but I really want it, then it's probably not what your character wants or what it
Yeah.
should be in there. So yeah, look out for that feeling. I like that. Go with your gut.
Yeah.
Um, beside the gut thing, I really like that. What other tips would you give out? Because this is mostly for beginning writers and everything too. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what are some other tips?
the biggest thing that I just realized, and it comes across like purely in this story for anyone that reads it, and obviously you read it. One of the things you liked the most was the motivational turtle, which is like a nonsense talking animal that genuinely I was sitting here and I was
Spoilers.
like, what I need something here. And that idea like invented its I didn't have like I haven't used a talking turtle. I've used talking animals in a lot of my other scripts, but I found that getting to the advice part, I've done these kinds of competitions that have 3 judges,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always a judge that reads something I write and they're like, how did you come up with this? This is such a wacky idea. I love it. Like this is one of the great, they just, dump praise on it. And then there's a judge out of the 3 who's always saying something like, why would you ever think this is okay? Like, why did you write this? This is insane. Why would anyone think this is okay to put on in a screenplay? And I found that that's exactly, especially the world we're in, not to get too high level of all the different places that eventually professional writers material can go out. There's that audience, there's that one judge that's just my audience, and that's the thing. So I don't change, I haven't stopped writing
Mm-hmm.
weird screenplays. I wrote as weird as they'll sound, like I wrote one where Ronald McDonald gets murdered and the payoff of the whole thing is that he had a secret relationship with one of his cows. The one of the judges was very upset about that. I wrote another, it had to be a love story, and it was a knife that falls in love with a chicken that it has to like chop up to be sold in a butcher shop. And it's weird things where someone likes it and someone won't, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop writing weird talking animals and talking inanimate objects. I just, that's what I like to do. And someone, you responded to it. I remember when I submitted this, I was like, she's either going to get this and love it, or they're going to be like, what? This is nothing. This is a person sitting on a beach. This is weird.
Yeah.
Uh, so fully not changing the kind of stuff you write or the tone you write in or the, absurdity of your stories just because you get some weird feedback. Cause I, like anyone else, probably has stories of negative feedback that I got that really didn't have anything to do with it just didn't sit with the person that was reading it, and not reading too much into that and sticking to what you kind of feel is right and want to enjoy writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I try to say that. I try not to make it sound so cliche, but I think a lot of people, even in the ink to screen, try to write wondering what I'm gonna like. I'm like, don't do that. Like I work really hard with you guys to not put my own prejudices or my own, projections on your guys' stuff. So I'm like, do what you because it comes through. That was like Anson, who won last month. And he really put all of himself in it, and and that's why he won that one. It was just so good. And because
I read that before I
yeah.
did the competition. That was the like the leprechaun story, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that covered that. I also enjoyed because it covered the absurd kind of base that you from this picture, something insane that if you read this, even if you're the grumpiest person, you have to
Yeah.
enjoy, like, this is wild. That's a wild idea. But
Yeah.
then also to have the heartwarming, emotional, like super impactful, deep payoff for the story, like that's what you can balance. And I think, like you said, you can only get that if you naturally are trying to just write the story. You can't forcefully write a story with a face melting leprechaun and an Alzheimer's daughter father payoff. You can't force that unless you're,
No.
some amazing writing machine that just does that.
Correct. Yeah. So that's kind of what, and I can usually tell. I'm like, oh, you were trying to, write something that didn't feel like you. And sometimes I go back and I see who the writer was, because I don't get that right away, until after I pick the winner and everything. And I'm like, okay, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So where can we currently catch your writing? Do you have it posted anywhere besides the inked screen, which will?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst about this of anything. I don't have Instagram. I have a Twitter that I don't very much use except to follow other writers and get writing news and meetups. I have a Coverfly profile that I have a script up there of a pilot. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Probably good motivation to have more of like a website set up. But I would say that there's the Coverfly profile. It is like public. Anyone can read stuff I put up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just try
And
to
I can
get
share that with you.
anybody who has one. I mean, I only have mine because I'm doing this is
Yeah.
helping and putting that out there. So I do my own promotional like
Yeah.
spread on there too, but I just like to see if anybody does, if they want to put it out there. So everybody who's, listening can read Ben's winning script along with the finalists. I've already put them up at thescriptmistress.com/ink winners with an S on the end, and you can read a story. Well, great. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview, Ben.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Wasn't that great? Right? So much fun. I hope I pronounced his name right. If you want to read any of Ben's work, his winning script, and the other 5 finalists for April, plus all the previous finalists, head on over to thescriptmistress.com/ink winners. Now, it's never too late to sign up. These monthly challenges go on every month. I love that a lot of the writers, most of the writers, kind of just use this as a writing exercise, because sometimes giving money and having the competition really helps them focus and get them into the spirit and writing new stuff, which I think is amazing. So you can totally register for the June challenge at thescriptmistress.com/ink to screen. Now, the writing action, I love giving you writing actions, but again, taking a break from the Archetype series, I want to remind you that I have several free guides and templates to help your writing. I have an outline template that can help. The Archetype series as well kind of help you with your characters. The Logline workbook, those are all there and free, totally free to download right off of the website. You can also check out, I kind of spotlighted the Logline cheat sheet at thescriptmistress.com/scene31. So you can get that from there. And please feel free to share any of your insights on the Facebook page, Ink to Screen. You never know if your insights will inspire someone else. That's why I love these interviews with the writers and the winners. I'm really excited. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. I truly value any feedback. If you have like an idea for a future podcast or maybe a future image prompt, please just reach out to me at amber@thescriptmistress.com. Like and follow this show wherever you are watching or listening so that you can stay up to date with my new episodes. And talk soon. And until then, happy writing.